At the beginning of the year, I made a video asking, what good is a protest? Filmed at a sparse gathering for a protest near me, I interviewed several protesters and walked away feeling somewhat despondent. While some protesters seemed to grapple with the gravity of the moment and the impending agenda Trump and his lackeys were clearly looking to enact, it seemed that many of the people were only passively engaging in politics. There were far more signs that felt like liberal bumper stickers, to put it plainly. Making inane pun jokes involving Putin and Elon, issues like Palestine and the genocide in Gaza were sidelined, and the targeting of trans and queer people was seen only on signs held by those demographics. And since then, the Trump administration has escalated their Project 2025-driven mandate with blinding speed. The ICE kidnappings and brutalization of citizenry in the last few months, and especially in the last escalating weeks, has spread to every corner of the social media space, and I think that flow of information may have actually sparked something. I think people are starting to take this shit seriously. The protest at the beginning of the year and my experience in Los Angeles, documenting the No Kings protest in June and the ensuing police brutality, have left me admittedly feeling jaded about the whole thing. I've seen so many of these hacky, toothless protest signs and so many people hand-wringing about political violence, even as protesters and the broad idea of a left in America are under daily attack, brutally. Yet the most recent No Kings protest here in Spokane, Washington, was somehow different. Maybe it's because the tariffs are finally causing common, everyday products to rise in price. Maybe it's due to the footage that circulates now daily of Trump's jackbooted ICE thugs abducting innocent women and children, or the seemingly endless horror stories of the innermost circles of the administration and the Christo-fascist designs of people like Stephen Miller. Maybe it's having seen the conservative calls for targeting private citizens in the wake of Charlie Kirk's incident a month ago, like the vice president going on a podcast to tell a citizen to report people for making jokes. Or maybe it's the blaring hypocrisy of the broad right-wing movement, like that same VP on that same podcast trying to excuse the recent young Republican Nazi chat leaks as just kids joking. I covered it recently on stream, but they were not kids. These are grown-ass men we're talking about here. Every week, it seems like shit just kind of gets worse, and things keep escalating, and it so often seems that the rest of the world doesn't notice that we're all privately going mad, looking at an endless churn of news that affects us, yet nobody is doing anything about it. And what I saw at the No Kings 2 protest gave me a bit of hope that that isn't the case. There were a few things I expected to see. Jokey signs are still there, to be sure, and you've got the eye-catching inflatable animal trend that was heavily represented, inspired by the steadfast people's frog at the Portland ICE protest. Plenty of people were at the protest in Spokane sporting their own frog costumes. I suspect that a large part of this trend is driven by the fact that these costumes are now easily accessible in October due to the Halloween costuming push. But as soon as I arrived, I was surprised by several things that I would have fully expected to be reserved for smaller, more radical protests. In past protests, I've been to the liberal contingent of Spokane, a city situated in a predominantly red area, has taken the center stage. Speakers from local community groups, colleges, or even churches would come up and talk in vague epithets about unity, rising above, going high when they go low, the usual. And all of this usually with an emphasis on respectability and identity politics, with speakers giving faint lip service to what we owe indigenous communities and black people and groups, with that sentiment seemingly, at least to them, fulfilling their obligation to progressive causes. It felt empty, hollow, and probably most importantly for a protest, lacking in any passion. Dare I even say lacking in anger. When I arrived on Saturday, things felt different top to bottom. It didn't just feel like a few people were angry, it seemed like everybody was. It didn't seem like the more radical or leftist ideas were being shuffled aside or sidelined. Instead, at the speaking stage, surrounded by hundreds, they were being platformed. There was no shyness about calling attention to the US-backed genocide in Gaza and calling out the government's engineering and complicity in most modern Middle East conflicts or the United States profiteering from them. Hundreds watched on in agreement as a woman whose organization I didn't catch laid the blame squarely for our modern economic hellscape at the feet of tech oligarchs, billionaires, and the classes exploiting and manipulating everyday people. No longer are people like Peter Thiel unknowns. Here, they are known names, targets of ire represented even on signage. When the initial speaking portion was over, the marches took two paths, circling for maximum exposure along separate routes to meet back at the park. I opted to join the longer march into residential streets and the nearby Garland district and took note of the signs as I did. The trend of more radical sentiment continued. There were less cutesy signage about Putin and Elon, with those sub-Facebook meme dunks seemingly replaced with straightforward sentiments calling Trump a rapist, pedophile, self-interested, profiteer, grifter, and more. In the wake of Antifa being declared a terrorist designation, normal people proudly, defiantly declared themselves as part of the group. The local socialist groups led the march, with Black Bloc up front for protection, brandishing homemade shields emblazoned with the Palestine flag. The sheer variety of people taking to the streets blew me away, especially in a smaller city like Spokane. You had the young, more politically active crowd leading chants about general strikes, ICE off our streets, and advocating the power of workers' unions and workers' rights as older people in walkers and wheelchairs joined in. You had proudly displayed armed forces service vets walking alongside college-age communist flag bearers. The most disappointing thing about this protest wasn't how many people showed up or how fervently they were demonstrating, but where it was situated. After June's No Kings protest in Spokane overflowed from the downtown area and the police decided to brutalize and bring out tear gas, I'm assuming event organizers didn't want to risk another repeat incident, and they scheduled No Kings 2 for further away from downtown. The park chosen, however, doesn't have nearly the amount of visibility or the power of a protest in the heart of downtown, where marches can easily take over whole streets and call attention to the cause being protested. Instead, while organizers didn't follow all the route directions given by police, the police nonetheless had a much easier time of diverting traffic and keeping the path clear for the march, meaning that the overall visibility of these thousands of people marching was limited to the residential homes and whoever saw it on the news. But I think this exposure was counterbalanced by the side street appeal of the main park staging ground, which had a massive flank dedicated to Division Street, a main thoroughfare in the city of Spokane. As the march groups eventually made it back to the park, groups congealed and spread along the roadway, packing thousands as seemingly equal proportions of cars drove by, an overwhelming amount honking in support. There were, of course, some counter-protesters who were trying to do, I'm not sure what. Actually, it was mostly just this guy who performatively drove back and forth, wasting gas for an hour while blaring Tom MacDonald. If you've ever suffered through that excuse for what can loosely be called music and wondered who this is for, it's for guys like this. And as the time for the event ended, people began making their way to smaller protests downtown or simply went home. It was cold, there had been a lot of walking, a lot of people were a little bit older, so I get it. But I was still curious, particularly about the older demographic that had shown up. At the protest at the beginning of 2025, people seemed to naively sidestep or avoid the idea that Trump's second term could see more political violence. And now, as it is becoming clear that the administration is openly looking for excuses to enact violence and that the resistance of the Capitol Hill Democrats was doing little to stem the tide of Trump's agenda, I was curious to see if that naivety had changed. I wanted to ask them, if nothing changes, what they thought would happen next if Trump gets his way. Some were a bit less talkative than others. What brings you out here today?
It's important to avoid a government that has a tendency to ignore the Constitution.
If Trump and his cabinet get their way and they get another 4 years in office, they overturn elections, they start putting Democrat lawmakers in jail, what do you think happens next?
Violent revolution.
All right.
Others told me personal stories, and behind their words, I felt the same anger, the same passion that no doubt drove so many people in the protest.
So tell us what kind of brings you out here today.
Well, I've had it up to here with Trump's actions and the whole Congress, and so I wanted to come out and show my support for getting rid of him.
If Trump doesn't step down during the election, if Republicans change voting laws, what do you think? Where's our recourse from here?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to say that we have hope, but I'm getting more and more disturbed about the fact that people can't figure out what he's doing.
So what brings you out here today?
Okay, I will do anything that it takes to help stop MAGA because of their poor leadership. The last time my son died from COVID, friends of mine died from COVID. That just it's just no excuse. And I will try and fight till I die against this tyranny. I'm just sick of it.
If none of this changes, or if they solidify power and start arresting Democrats and lawmakers, what do you think happens next? What do we do?
Okay, so that's happened before, and it's not anything that hasn't here in America. And dictators don't last, and injustice doesn't last. And as long as people are willing to stand up and say, "I've had enough," then they're going to go down. Eventually, they'll go down.
Some just came to show their support because they were tired. They felt fed up.
What brings you out here today?
Just we need to have the rights that we're supposed to have. No one is illegal on stolen land, and our president needs to follow the rules set forth. And if a judge says he can't do something, then he can't do something. So
what do you think happens if they get their way, they overturn the election process, Trump gets another term?
I'm afraid to find out, and I really hope it doesn't, because I don't know. I'm terrified if that were to happen.
Almost all of them seemed to be grappling with a kind of sadness, something that felt like a recognition of how bad things might still get if Trump and his lackeys get their way, if they get to completely overthrow the rule of law in America, start jailing their political opposition. And I wanted to end with a more in-depth interview with one of the event organizers who I had a wonderful chat with at the event. She recounted to me decades of activist work, and despite echoing the same broad fears for the future that many others seemed to be reckoning with, our conversation did end on a note of hope.
Made you want to get into planning and this kind of local activism, or is it something you've always been in?
Oh yeah, my first arrest, I was 9. I thought black people ought to have the right to vote. And then, I've had my juvenile arrests are kind of cleared up. All that stuff were not available or whatever. And so one of my friends, I was living in Hawaii at the time, and my friend says, "Oh, Kiki, when you turn 18 next week, these arrests are going to start counting." And I went, "Wow." Huh. So I joined the military and all that kind of stuff, and because I was protesting against the war, I thought my friends at 18 could be drafted and killed in Vietnam, and we couldn't vote on whether they should be in there until they were 21. So for 3 years, they were cannon fodder, baby, just cannon fodder. So I said, I'll join the military and I'll infiltrate, beat them from the inside. I'm good at that. Turns out. So anyway, then, 73 happened and we're done, and 75, we're finally out there and all, everything's good. So, and I love that. I was a crew chief. I fixed airplanes for a living. AC-135s and B-52s, that was a lot of fun. Because I didn't want to be a sexetary, back in the 60s and 70s, right? So, anyway, peacetime came. We all started going, oh man, we got time to dance now, we got time to have a life, we have time to have kids, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that was good. And then the memory of World War II started to fade. And all the military folks who understood what fascism was, he said, maybe this Trump guy is okay. So when he first came in, I had run the Women's March organization, so I'm not afraid of, and my background is in theater and drama and dance and, television stuff. So I'm not afraid of a big script. Lots of players, no problem. And so when he got in, then it was that. And then we thought he was gone. We thought Americans would learn their lesson, but they didn't. And they're now discovering what they actually voted for. And that's why these are growing. They double in manpower every time that comes out to these. Our first one was hands off here with this. It was about, the cost on me like $6,000, $6,500. And then downtown we did No Kings, and that was about $14,000. And then this was about 20. I haven't seen the drone footage yet, but this is a 10-acre park. And it was full from this street to that one, and from Division to Normandy. It was pretty full, except for one little pocket right up here where nobody could see what was going on. So that was kind of empty, but that's all right. Drone footage will show.
So, if Trump and the administration get their way, as far as overturning elections, as far as Trump getting another 4 years, it's very clear he's angling towards that. Declaring just kind of any political opposition as Antifa or all that. What do you think happens at that point? What do you think happens next?
The people will keep rising up against it, and he thinks he's winning, but he's losing in court. He's losing in the court of public opinion. More people are coming out. I mean, we got everybody from anarchists to Zen Buddhists wanting to work together. Farmers and, everybody is realizing this guy is not for us. And so there are going to be some diehards. There have always been diehards. We've always had the KKK. We've always had, people who thought they were better than others. And I think actually the thing that scared the Republican Party the most was when the Black Lives Matter movement took off. And they saw how many beautiful white faces were mixed in with all those black faces and brown faces, and that scared them. But they realized this education, where you get to learn about the other people on an everyday basis, that actually works. Scared them. Scared the hell out of them. So, we all feel that way now. It's been 50 years since that. I can attest every year of that. And it's just, people won't put up.
It's hard to feel hope right now. I try to be optimistic, but like I said earlier, every day it seems to get a little worse. We're all being ground down. And I've seen people ask, what's the use of protests like these? If it's not direct revolutionary action, if it's not putting up a front against the active crushing efforts of agencies like ICE. And I think it's in these interviews that I have an answer. Even in the middle of people with so many different beliefs from so many different backgrounds, we can come together to try to find a way forward, putting aside petty differences to fight against what we all know is wrong. And along the way, maybe understand each other a little better. Maybe these protests can help an MSNBC brunch libs understand concepts like Marxism and socialism better. Whatever comes next, it's clear from my time interviewing people that a lot of people are scared and apprehensive about the future. Everyone knows this is far from over, but no matter what that next step looks like, I know we can come together and build coalitions, reach out to each other, and help everyone move forward together. At least that is what I'm hoping